Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fiction genre. For today's episode, I'm gonna talk about the winter finale of Teen Wolf. Oh, this episode was so good. So obviously this is the big conclusion of the whole storyline. A lot of highlights in the episode. Many things to go run over. First thing I'm going to talk about freaking Argent and Melissa. I was kind of alluding to that being a thing, and I love the fact is that she kissed him because he was like, what was that for? She's like, that was so hot. That little quick draw he did with the Ghost Rider. I felt like it was going to have a weird ending, like someone's going to come up and snap its neck, or Melissa was going to say why are you waiting for? Just shoot it or something. But it's just it just had that old Western type of moment, just who draws first, and he shot it. He did talk about the fact is, he was going to keep that. I hope he was able to keep that gun. Just hopefully we get to see him just pop it out at one point in the future. They're fighting something and pow, he shoots it. That'd just be sick. But just that little thing. I brought it up before because I always thought, Sheriff Stilinski and Melissa might get together, but I mean, Argent is fine too. Like I said, I already saw it coming together because they were already spending so much time together this season, so. But basically, that's just me throwing that out there because it was kind of right there on the back of my mind. But obviously, in this episode, we end up finding out how Douglas ends up planning on how to do everything that he wants to do, get his army. Essentially, he's blending both worlds together. Like the world that the Ghost Riders are from, he blends it with this world, and that's how he's going to bring his army over. It's kind of has to deal with Corey because Corey's kind of the focal point of everything because Corey has the power to shift between both worlds. For instance, every time he would go camouflage himself with his ability, he'd end up seeing the Ghost Riders, and obviously he could also pull them into this world, so he can cross the boundaries. That's why, it's kind of sad because you end up seeing him hooked up to the machines and everything, and it's just kind of even had that microphone in his chest like that. It was kind of rough seeing him like that, especially for Mason. I really should have started it from the very beginning. The fact is, you have Styles back. Oh, it was so good. His dad showed up to, buy him some time and was like, yo, get back. And it was style. And we're out of everywhere he could pop up. Where does he pop up? Inside of his Jeep, of course. It probably makes sense because that's where he was taken originally, but also it's so good. It's the right spot anyway. Even if that wasn't where he was taken, it makes the most sense. Obviously, it most likely is because of where he was taken, but it symbolizes so much that the first place he pops up in is in that Jeep. And gets reunited with everyone. You have Douglas there standing in front of Scott and Liam kind of doing his own speech. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'd love to have a true alpha. I'd have a banshee and a were-coyote as, my Ghost Riders are kind of work beside me. And he's like, what the Styles? And he hears, what the Styles? And he turns what's the Styles? And all of a sudden Styles shows up and hits him, runs up and hugs Scott. And they're like, oh. It's and Liam's like, yo, Styles, guys. He's like, don't worry, Liam, I missed you too. And I'm just it was so good seeing them work together. And then also that moment where Liam kind of ran off because he had an idea. And then they're like, no, Liam. And Styles was like, were we like that? When they were younger with this whole thing. And then Scott was like, no, we were worse. Just kind of going off gun-ho when it came to a whole circumstances. What he was planning on doing is riding a Ghost Rider. He wouldn't have to be taken. He just gets onto a Ghost Rider's horse and it kind of leads the way because it's just like a Ghost Rider and it can cross the boundaries. And lo and behold, who shows up to help him out? Theo. Once again, like I said, everyone kind of does a 360. It seems like who Theo is now is kind of staying. Granted, at the end of the episode, we don't. Well, I'll kind of get into that later. I'll run through the rest of the episode first. But he gets there. He helps out with the whole situation. By getting to hate it. I love the fact that he kisses hate it, and then they framed it in such a funny way where it's just kind of you see Mason there standing there, on the other side of them while they're making out, and it's almost you almost feel bad for Mason because it's almost like he's a third wheel in that situation. It's if I was Mason, I'm surprised they added in the line. So okay, you can kiss your girlfriend and everything, but no hugs for your best friend or something like that. I also like the fact is that Scott and Styles kept getting split up throughout the episode because you were like, yo, let's split. They're like, should we split up earlier? And he was like, nah, never again. And it's good idea. And it was every time something happens, first it was Douglas splitting them up and everything. Even Styles having that line of finally saw the inside of the girls' locker room. Honestly, it's not that different from the boys' locker room. I'm actually kind of very disappointed in that. And something else that kind of popped up, I thought was kind of interesting was his mom pops up again. But it's some kind of monster that I guess I guess that's kind of what happened with the lady from Canaan. I'm guessing that's what her son really looked like underneath. But basically, I guess it's a monster that kind of feeds off of someone's emotions and stuff like that and takes on a form. It's like, oh no, like, that's not really his mom. It's kind of a monster that took on that form, and it lived because it was feeding off Stilinski's need to have her around. Like, because he's always wanted, like, that need to fill that hole in his heart, essentially, with Styles missing, and it kind of replaced Styles with his wife Claudia. But it seems like that's what that was about. So I was kind of right earlier when I was like, oh, it's some kind of monster not willing to give itself up. It doesn't seem like it was just kind of a memory thing. So I'm assuming the lady from Canaan, her situation is very similar, that that's actually what her son really looks like underneath, except, obviously she didn't break the illusion because she didn't want to let go of her son, so it doesn't have to take on any other form. I guess because it doesn't need to hurt you or anything, it just constantly feeds off that. I mean, like I said, it's not something that was really delved into. I do like the fact is that the only way, it was hurt by Lydia and Sheriff Stilinski. Like, he fires a bullet and she, like, basically blasts it with her power at the same time and kills a monster. Like I said, that was kind of the end of it. So I don't know if that's something we'll ever kind of get brought up. And it's one of those things, I'm sure, it's kind of like, you draw your own conclusions. It's like, we don't have to fill in the blanks. You can make up your own thing about it. So that's how I'm interpreting it. And I also love the fact is that obviously it seems like we're setting up Lydia. Well, not just setting it up. It's literally Styles and Lydia because they made out and everything. Because basically the plan, because once the train arrives, basically everyone boards and they're going forever. I guess at that point their souls are going and they officially just become Ghost Riders. So Scott's there at first, and like he's surrounded by Ghost Riders, and Douglas is in front of him. But even then, Scott doesn't back down. And lo and behold, who shows up? Theo, Malia, and Peter. Which I love the fact is that how Malia had to talk to Peter. She's like basically like she's like she can't get Peter out of the trance, and Malia's like, Lydia's like, oh, you're just gonna have to, you know what you have to do. Is like, I can't do that. I can't call him Dad. Like, there's no way. And Lydia's like, oh, I guess everyone's just going to die. And she's like, oh, fine. And she calls him Dad. The first time she's ever done that. And especially she says in such an emotional way and everything. So, but lo and behold, they all show up and they kick some serious ass against, like, the Ghost Riders. Obviously, there's kind of an interesting thing that it popped up early in the episode, but it kind of disappeared after a little while. Was the fact is that Peter tried clawing at one of the Ghost Riders, but it was phasing away. His claws were going through it. I guess because at that point in time, because the worlds were so unstable, because they were fusing together, there was kind of a middle ground where the Ghost Riders weren't particularly. I guess at that particular time they weren't in that Rider world. They were kind of the worlds were blending so well together that it's kind of like phasing in between the worlds, so I'm guessing that's why he couldn't hurt him, but eventually he could. But the fact is they were fighting and everything, and then so much sick stuff. Like when Scott was running down the hallway and Ghost Riders were on both ends, they were shooting at him. He was literally flipping and kind of cartwheeling in the air, and then runs up and flips off of a wall just to get away from the shots. I was like, dude, that's unnecessarily sick. And then that moment where Malia's running and there's a whole bunch of Ghost Riders in front of her, she jumps and flips over them like the sickest flip ever, grabs a whip and hands it to Scott, and Scott whips the device, obviously to switch the tracks. I love it, dude. And it doesn't hurt that all that was done in slow motion. Like, I can't, like, because the thing is, slow motion is still like a novelty to me. Because, there's certain things that happen in slow-mo, but I don't watch slow-mo a whole bunch. You would think I kind of would with the way I just love it. But it's such a still spectacle thing to me that when I see it, it's just like, I love it, especially in TV shows, because I think TV shows do it really good. Obviously, movies do it as well, but it's like, because I'm more of a TV person, that's kind of getting off topic, obviously. But then you had Douglas trying to order the Ghost Riders, but they didn't. They just ended up, not just taking him, they ended up turning him into one. So basically the entire situation was settled with that. The hunt was over, which, like, to me, like, I kept bringing it up. I thought he was the one that they were after. It would make sense because when we ended up getting his backstory, was it not last episode? Was that last episode? No, that was the episode before last. Ended up getting his backstory, and basically his wound on his back from the Ghost Riders makes it so that they were probably always tracking him down. Maybe that's the main reason why they came to Beacon Hills, especially at this point in time, because they were trying to track him down because it was like he was a loose end. That's their main reason for coming there. Still not 100% sure why they went as crazy as they did in Canaan. Like, that's still kind of I don't know. Maybe it was covered and then I didn't really catch it. Maybe they just randomly do that to certain places if they're motivated enough. It seems like their main reason for, I would assume, would be because of Douglas being in Beacon Hills and whatnot. So, but nevertheless, he's turned into a ghostwriter and he's gone. And with that, everyone is brought back to town. It seems like the only people that remember are the people that were affected, like the main characters and stuff. They're the only ones that remember. And a big, basically this is almost like a little send-off because it's like, Scott and Styles and everyone, like, with the exception of Malia because she has to go to summer school, but everyone else is kind of done with school. And now the next step is college, especially for Lydia because now when she starts college, which would be like MIT, she gets to start as a junior. Everyone's like Scott and Styles like, how does she do that? It's like Scott's like, she's just a genius, dude. That's crazy. Because I love one of Styles' lines through the episode being like, he's like, man, how is it? I'm going for a couple days and just everything turns to crap. And Scott's like, you haven't been gone for like a couple days. It's been 3 months. He's like, wait, 3 months? Oh man, they still better let me graduate or I swear to God, it's just like, I hadn't even really realized that much time has passed either. I guess it kind of makes sense that much time has passed, but it's like he legitimately thought it was only going for a couple of days, and it seems you would think that too, but with everything going on, but it's actually been 3 months. But obviously you have that like emotional little moment between, it's like, yep, so me and Scott are going off to college, so that means everything is up to you, Liam. You're the new alpha. He's like, well, technically to be a new alpha, I'd have to kill an alpha. He's like, you're an alpha in training. You get my point. And he's like, but always remember that Mason will always be there, being your best friend and everything. He'll always be there to bail you out of every situation. And Scott's like, well, not every situation. Sounds like most situations, which is true. Like I said, that's why I love it because they represent the new them and everything. Like I said, that whole line earlier I mentioned, about being like, oh, well, we like that. So it's like looking at freshman versions of themselves, like when this all kind of started for them. But it's like Scott and Styles are going to have to say goodbye because they're going to 2 different colleges. He's even giving Scott the Jeep and everything, which I love the fact that he's like, yeah. He's like, oh, what's all this? He's like, yeah, I'm giving you all the copies I made to the sheriff's station, to your house, to the vet place that Scott worked with Deaton. Just all these different places. He's like, I'm giving you the keys, and it's like, yo, I'm gonna really miss you. It's like, yeah. He's like, because I need you, Scott. And he's like, I need you too. He's like, yeah, no, I mean, Scott, I really need you because I lost my driver's license because of the wild hunt. And it's like you see them driving off, and I didn't, obviously because I ended up recording this because of other stuff, but I didn't actually get to see the end. I mean, obviously, because it's going to be like, oh, when the next part of the season starts. Which I don't know. Obviously, it probably won't be until like June or something, because that used to be when Teen Wolf will come out. Like, in the earlier seasons, like June would be kind of around the time it comes out. So I would assume then, but obviously I'll do a little more checking later. But I don't know. It was a somber moment because it's almost like, dude, this could almost be where they ended it. But obviously this is like the first half of the season, but still that means we're halfway done now. It's like there's only 10 more episodes, and it's like then it'll be officially over. But because this is the moment where it's like almost like they waited, got it. It's almost like you could end it, but obviously we got to finish up everyone's story, and it's just it's so many questions about where things are going to end up. It's like now that we have Styles and Lydia, which is something that's kind of always been there since like the very beginning. Once again, I'll bring it up. It's like, what happened to you and Malia? I guess like they broke up, sometime during last season. I guess like I don't know. I thought there was still something, which is sad. But I still like the Lydia and Styles thing, but at the same time, it's just always thought like I was like, oh man, but I liked you and Malia. It's a tough decision because both are very fantastic girls, I'm just curious what's going to happen. Like since there's a Lydia and Styles, what does that mean for him and Malia? Because like for Malia, Styles was the one that kind of kept her calm and stuff like that. So what does that mean going forward? Will she still be that for him, or will Malia have to find someone else to be that for her? Then the whole situation about, Mason, Hayden, and Liam kind of being the new group to kind of handle things in Beacon Hills. Basically, they had that conversation like they'll need us, and it's like they'll always need us. So it's kind of saying like we'll always be there. I guess it's kind of setting up, the final half of the final season. So they find out where everyone is, find out what kind of condition Corey's in. see if there's any more story that deals with Parrish being a hellhound and stuff like that. Just like he's such a big important thing, and obviously he played a big role in this because of being controlled and everything. But it's like maybe there's more to like that. I don't know, like because the second half of the season is really going to be closing off different people's story, and it's like I wonder what awaits them. Obviously, what we'll probably be seeing in the next, I would assume, is just their college years. Obviously, them trying to get acquainted to the whole college life, but also dealing with the supernatural. I mean, it makes you wonder too, how will this all end? Maybe at the end of it all, Scott will be cured. Maybe he'll find a way to cure himself of his werewolfism. I mean, because he's kind of been neck deep in this supernatural world for a while, and now also. Once again, you gotta give mad props to Styles because throughout the entire series, he managed to stay non-supernatural. And you can't deny how awesome that. Yes, there's the whole Nagitsune situation, but still. It also makes you wonder where does Theo stand because it's like, well, I mean, I'm sure Peter's going to stick around because of Malia, but it's like, what is Theo going to do? I mean, there's no way to put him back because of the whole situation because the sword's broken. I mean, granted, things didn't turn out as bad as Kira's mom kind of made it seem like, oh, there's no undoing it. I mean, granted, that doesn't mean he might not cause problems early, but I mean, like I said, it seems like everything's on good terms. I mean, that's the question too. Maybe he'll stick around and he'll become part of Liam, Mason, and Hayden's pack. I mean, granted, they'll have reservations because it's like he's a douchebag and everything. Because Malia was quick to, he's like, when it was like, Douglas was talking to him, was like talking to Scott. It's like, oh, you know what happens with a lone wolf? And Theo shows him, he's not alone. He's got his pack. And then Malia quickly shows out, which Theo isn't part of. It's like, don't get it twisted, dude. You're not part of this. Which he helped out and everything, which is like, I'm curious to see where his story goes because he can't go back and it's like, what place is there for him in all of this? Does he go off to college too? Like, will we be completely removed from Beacon Hills? Because I feel like we wouldn't because that's where the story hasn't completely closed on Beacon Hills. So like I'm saying, I'm sure that some of the storylines are going to have to be closed. Like I said, want to know like who's going to come back or not. Come on, Derek. I hope Derek comes back. I hope. At the very least, Kira, too, just because it's like, whatever her situation is with the Skinwalkers, that gets resolved. I'm just curious to know what kind of threat is waiting. Because, like, this season didn't even set up one. Also makes you wonder would that Kate storyline come back or not. I mean, I guess that comes down to the creators as well as Kate Wagner, the actress who... What's her name, Kate? Jill. Oh, my God, I'm such a jerk for saying that. No, Jill Wagner, that's it. I guess it also comes down to her, too. Because I don't think Argent ever found her when he went chasing after her at the end of season 4. But like I said, that whole situation, still unsure whatever happened to Malia's mom. I guess she's kind of got arrested. Maybe she's somewhere in Icon House to kind of keep her away from Malia trying to kill her. Could be something that comes back up. Especially now that Peter's back in her life. I want to see that now. Like, see, like, Desert Wolf kind of break out or come back in some shape or form. And then it's like, when it comes, she's after Malia, and then Peter's in the way. And it's like, oh. It's like, oh, Peter. It's like, oh man, it's been a while. Just like having them come face to face. I also think, like, I brought it up before, but I get the feeling at some point Liam has got to turn into a true alpha. It's got to be a situation like that. Like, I feel like that's where it's going to end with him becoming a true alpha or something like that. Like, fully, completely taking over the role or something like. Because obviously, like, the torch is already being passed, but still, like, I'm so curious to know what other story, like, what's this last story going to be like? Who are they going to go up against? I mean, they faced so much and they've come out swinging on top. And it's like, you can't deny that, like, Scott's got, like, he's, like, literally the best werewolf in the world and he's got, like, the best pack. I'm surprised that hasn't come out yet, too. I mean, granted, it kind of happened with Deucalion and his pack of alphas, but, like, surprised, like, more werewolves haven't, like, other supernaturals, like, oh, Scott McCall, everyone's heard about him, the true alpha that's conquered everything, Deucalion and his pack, a druid, the berserkers, Kinema, the dread doctors, chimeras, the ghost riders, Alolan Minch. It's like, he's conquered so much, and it's like, he's come out on top. So I'm surprised, maybe that could be what they do for the final season, like set it up so that a whole bunch of people come after Scott. Like every supernaturals from around the world have heard Scott's name and they all want to take down someone that they consider the reigning king. Or maybe it'll be a situation where you meet someone who's kind of like the king of werewolves or something that Scott has to go up against. I don't know. Either way, I know I'm thinking like well out there and I'm like none of that's possible, but it'd be sick. I don't know. I'm super excited to see what they do with it. Like I said, I'm sad, but like this was such a good episode. I was grinning the entire time. I was like, yeah, especially when Styles got back. I literally cheered. Obviously, I didn't yell out loud, but I was just like, had my arms in the air, like, yeah. I knew it was coming, but still, it felt so good just to have his pack brought back together and whole again. Kind of whole, like I said, with the exception of the whole Kira situation. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about. I mean, I just need to stop geeking out right now. I do apologize for that. So, that's really all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.